What would happen if Texas became independent from the United States? Can you imagine a world where Texas would not be part of the United States, but a sovereign country? What would the history, politics, economy, and culture of this Texan nation be like? What would be the consequences for the rest of the Americas and the world? In this video, we will discover a hypothetical scenario of Texas independence, based on historical facts, current trends, and future projections. Ready to travel to a parallel dimension? Join us on this journey. Let's go! What you need to know about Texas. Texas is quite a turbulent history. It has passed through the hands of several countries and already has a history with independence, because yes, more than 100 years ago, if you didn't know, Texas managed to become its own country. Sure, it didn't last long, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's start from the very beginning. In the 16th century, the Spanish came to Texas and established a trading post in San Antonio. Then in the 18th century, they ceded Texas to France, and France sold it to the United States in 1803. And if you think these were a lot of changes, you have no idea. Well, in 1821, Mexico became independent from Spain and Texas became part of Mexico. How crazy is that? A lot of changes happened in such a short period in this state. Texas remained part of Mexico for quite some time, but misfortune would befall this territory again as the Mexican government attracted American settlers to Texas, which led to an increase in the American population in the region. These settlers had cultural and political differences with the Mexicans, which resulted in a very difficult coexistence. In 1835, the American settlers rebelled against the Mexican government. The Texas Revolution ended with the victory of the Texans at the Battle of San Jacinto in 1836. On March 2nd of that same year, the Texans declared their independence from Mexico. The Republic of Texas was an independent state for 9 years. However, this did not last long either, since in 1945 Texas was annexed to the United States. But for what reason? The answer will surprise no one, as it is the same old story in cases like this. The state had many economic, political, and military problems. They did not join the USA because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice, and they also left Mexico without a good part of the land that belonged to them. How has Texas fared with the USA, and how are they doing today? In the years since its annexation to the USA, Texas has experienced significant growth and development. It is the largest state in the country, with a population of over 30 million people. So let's analyze some data about Texas to know how they're living nowadays and if it is convenient for them to separate from the USA or not. On the positive side. On the one hand, Texas has a strong economy, with a GDP of over $1.7 trillion. The state is a major center for energy, agriculture, manufacturing, and technology. In addition, it has a fairly rich culture in art, music, and cuisine. Although somewhat conservative. For good measure, Texas has several high-quality universities, including the University of Texas at Austin, Texas A&M University, and the University of Houston. Several citizens also claim that it has an efficient government, with low taxes and fairly responsible government spending. And these are the negative aspects we should know. Texas has a high level of economic inequality, one of the worst in the USA. The growing gap between rich and poor is very large. And as I briefly mentioned, it is a politically and socially conservative state. Its policies and views are often controversial. Add to that the constant illegal immigration across its border with Mexico, and we have a cocktail for conflict. At this point, what would a world where Texas becomes independent, again, look like? First of all, we would have to ask, could Texas become independent from the United States today? The short answer is no. Texas could not unilaterally secede from the United States. The Constitution does not allow a state to secede from the Union without the consent of Congress. Currently, some groups in Texas advocate state independence. However, as with Alaska, these groups have little popular support and are unlikely to succeed in achieving the goal of independence. In any case, suppose one of these parties accomplishes its goal and Texas is now its own country. What would happen now? Texas would now be one of the largest countries in North America, with a population of over 30 million people. Its independence would create a major new location in the region, with the potential to challenge the dominance of the United States throughout the Americas. Texas has a GDP of more than $1.7 trillion. Its independence could disrupt global supply chains and affect international trade. Pay attention to that last thing I said. It would not only affect the U.S. economy but the international economy as well. But why? The independence of this state could lead to a greater development of the culture and a greater distance between Texas and the United States. This is because the Texan culture, although they do not like to admit it, has also borrowed heavily from Mexican culture. Texas has already managed to distance itself from Mexico, and if it were to distance itself from the USA, we would see the birth of a new Texan culture, which would probably become the largest conservative culture in the world, or at least close to it. But definitely, the biggest change we would see in this world would be related to the border between Texas and Mexico. If Texas manages to become independent, Mexico would no longer border the US, and as horrible as it sounds to say it, this would save Americans a lot of headaches. Now it would be Texas who would have to deal with the constant immigration problems, although this would only apply if independent Texas managed to. Would only apply if independent Texas manages to continue to offer a decent lifestyle, because in case its independence leads to disaster, the new U.S. headache would be Texans trying to repatriate and cross the border into the new fragmented United States without Texas. We are not done with this topic yet, because if one thing is clear to me, it is that many Latinos would risk their lives in a very unfair way. A while ago we commented that the conservative actions of Texas were at the very least controversial. And that is because they have become quite controversial. The governor of Texas has made his position and that of his people very clear. One of their biggest problems is immigration, and because of that, they have done everything they can to make sure they keep any undocumented Latino away from their territory. Now imagine that this man goes from being a governor to the president of this new nation. What will he be capable of now that practically no one could be against him? You don't even want to think about what could end up happening, nor about the consequences, because if he goes too far with his decisions, it is evident that the possibilities of a conflict with his neighboring countries would increase every day. The independence of Texas is a more interesting topic than that of Alaska, video by the way already uploaded in the channel. Finally, the importance of this state for the USA is quite remarkable. In addition, the position of its territory would change the panorama of the strong illegal immigration that the United States suffers. And if you want to know more stories like this about the United States, see you when it's time to explore another world.